The blood-curdling scream echoed through the dusty streets of Silverspring as Delilah Dawson clawed desperately at the rough hands dragging her into the shadowy alleyway between the saloon and general store. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a frightened bird in a cage as the three men laughed, their whiskey-soured breath hot against her face. "Let me go!" Delilah shouted, her voice raw with fear as she thrashed against their grip. The tallest one, a man with a jagged scar running from his eye to his jaw, yanked her harder, causing her to stumble on the hem of her simple blue dress. "Quiet now, pretty thing. We just want to have a little fun," he growled, his calloused fingers digging into the soft flesh of her arm. The spring evening of 1878 had started innocently enough. Delilah had arrived in Silverspring just 3 days prior, taking a modest room above the millinery shop where she'd secured employment. After losing her parents to influenza last winter, the 22-year-old had gathered what little she owned and traveled west from St. Louis, determined to forge a new life for herself. Now, as terror gripped her throat, she wondered if that new beginning would end before it truly started. "I said let her go." The voice that cut through the alley was quiet, but carried the sharp edge of steel against stone. The men turned, Delilah still struggling in their grasp, to see a tall figure silhouetted at the mouth of the alley. The dying sunlight caught on the brim of his worn Stetson, casting his face in shadow. "This ain't your concern, stranger," snarled the man holding Delilah. "Best move along before you get hurt." The stranger stepped forward, and Delilah caught her first clear glimpse of him. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his own strength. No gun belt circled his hips, unusual for these parts, and he wore a simple cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. "I won't ask again," he said, blue eyes hard as river stones. The scarred man shoved Delilah against the wall and turned to face the newcomer. "Boys, looks like we got ourselves a hero." He nodded to his companions, who moved to flank him. "3 against 1, and you ain't even healed. Not very smart." The stranger shrugged off his vest, folding it with deliberate care before placing it atop a nearby barrel. "Don't need a gun for the likes of you." What happened next unfolded with such speed that Delilah could barely follow it. The scarred man lunged, knife suddenly gleaming in his hand. The stranger sidestepped with fluid grace, catching the attacker's wrist and twisting. There was a sharp crack, followed by a howl of pain as the knife clattered to the dirt. The second man charged, fists swinging wildly. The stranger ducked beneath the haymaker, driving his fist into the man's midsection with enough force to lift him momentarily off his feet. As the man doubled over, gasping, the stranger delivered a sharp uppercut that sent him sprawling unconscious in the dust. The third assailant hesitated, eyeing his fallen companions, then the exit. His moment of indecision cost him as the stranger closed the distance between them with 2 long strides. One punch to the jaw was all it took to send the man crumpling to join his friends. Only the scarred leader remained, cradling his broken wrist and glaring with murderous rage. "You're dead, mister. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Franklin Deeds and his sorry excuse for a gang," the stranger replied calmly. "Known throughout 3 territories for preying on women and robbing stagecoaches. Nothing but cowards with knives." He stepped closer. "Now get your trash and clear out before I really lose my temper." Deeds spat at the stranger's feet but backed away, kicking at his companions until they stirred. "This ain't over," he muttered as they staggered to their feet. "It is for today." The stranger didn't move until all 3 had disappeared from the alley. Then he turned to Delilah, his expression softening. "Are you hurt, miss?" Delilah realized she was trembling, her back still pressed against the rough wooden wall. She shook her head, though her voice failed her. The stranger retrieved his vest, giving her a moment to collect herself. "Name's Cole Mitchell," he said, his voice gentler now. "I'd be happy to see you safely to your destination." Delilah Dawson? She managed, pushing herself away from the wall on unsteady legs. I. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. Her voice broke, and Cole nodded understanding. No need to dwell on it. Those men won't trouble you again tonight. He offered his arm. Where were you headed? The millinery shop. I work there. Live there too. In the room upstairs. Delilah hesitantly placed her hand on his offered arm, surprised by the solid strength beneath her fingers. As they emerged from the alley, the last rays of sunlight bathed the dusty main street in golden light. Delilah noticed several townspeople watching curiously, though none had come to her aid. Cole seemed to notice their attention as well, positioning himself slightly between her and their stares. New to Silverspring? He asked as they walked, his stride shortening to match hers. 3 days now, she admitted. I came from St. Louis after my parents passed. Cole nodded, his expression unreadable. Brave journey for a young woman alone. Not brave, necessary. Delilah straightened her shoulders. And yourself? You seem to know of those men. I've been tracking Deeds and his gang across 2 territories, Cole replied, his voice hardening slightly. They've hurt a lot of people. You're a lawman. Then? Delilah glanced at his hip again, noting the absence of a badge as well as a gun. A shadow passed across Cole's face. Not anymore. They reached the millinery shop, its painted sign gently swinging in the evening breeze. Delilah reluctantly released his arm, suddenly aware of how inappropriate it might look to be escorted by a strange man, however gallant his actions had been. Thank you again, Mr. Mitchell, she said formally, though her eyes conveyed deeper gratitude. Cole touched the brim of his hat. Just Cole is fine, and you're welcome, Miss Dawson. Delilah, please. She hesitated at the shop door. Are you staying in town long? Something in his expression shifted, becoming almost wistful. Wasn't planning to, but I've got unfinished business with Deeds now. Then perhaps we'll meet again. Delilah surprised herself with her boldness. Cole's smile transformed his weathered face. I'd count on it, Delilah. As she watched him walk away, Delilah felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. For the first time since arriving in Silverspring, she thought this dusty frontier town might hold more promise than she had initially believed. Morning light streamed through the small window of Delilah's room, dust motes dancing in the golden beams. She had slept fitfully, her dreams haunted by rough hands and the flash of a knife. But also present in those dreams was the stranger Cole, his steady presence a bulwark against the fear. Dressing quickly in a simple brown skirt and white blouse, Delilah pinned her chestnut hair into a neat bun at the nape of her neck. Mrs. Holloway, the shop owner, had been kind enough to advance her a small portion of her wages, allowing her to purchase basic necessities. The older woman had taken an immediate liking to Delilah, appreciating both her fine stitching and her Eastern manners. There you are, dear, Mrs. Holloway greeted her as she descended the narrow staircase. I was beginning to worry. Are you feeling well? You look a touch pale. Delilah hesitated. News traveled quickly in small towns, and she was certain Mrs. Holloway would hear about yesterday's incident eventually. I had a bit of trouble yesterday evening, she admitted. Some men accosted me. Mrs. Holloway's plump face paled. Oh, my dear girl, were you harmed? No, thankfully. A gentleman intervened. Delilah busied herself with arranging ribbons in the display case, hoping to hide the color rising in her cheeks. A gentleman? Mrs. Holloway's tone changed, curiosity replacing concern. Not many of those in these parts. Who was this gallant rescuer? He called himself Cole Mitchell. Mrs. Holloway's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. Mitchell? The gunfighter? Delilah's hands stilled on the ribbons. Gunfighter? He wasn't wearing a gun. Well, that's a change. Mrs. Holloway said, lowering her voice despite the empty shop. Cole Mitchell was one of the fastest guns in the territory a few years back. Became a marshal over in Coopersville until... She trailed off, seemingly reconsidering her words. Until what? Delilah prompted, unable to contain her curiosity. Mrs. Holloway sighed. It's not my story to tell, dear. But there was trouble. Bad trouble, and afterward, they say he hung up his guns for good. Swore never to draw on another man. She patted Delilah's hand. He's got a reputation as a fair man, though. If he's in Silverspring, he must have his reasons. The bell above the shop door jingled, announcing their first customer of the day, and the conversation was set aside. But Delilah's thoughts remained on Cole throughout the morning as she helped customers, trimmed hats, and organized inventory. It was near midday when the shop door opened and Cole Mitchell himself stepped inside, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. Sunlight caught the hints of copper in his dark hair, and Delilah noticed a small scar above his right eyebrow that she'd missed in the dim light of the alley. "Mr. Mitchell," Mrs. Holloway greeted him warmly. "It's been some time since you've graced Silverspring with your presence." "Mrs. Holloway," Cole nodded respectfully. "You're looking well. And you're looking like you could use a good meal," the older woman replied with motherly concern. "Still too lean by half." Cole smiled, the expression transforming his solemn face. Some things never change. His eyes found Delilah, and his smile softened. "Miss Dawson, I hope you're recovered from yesterday's unpleasantness." "Yes, thank you," Delilah replied, suddenly very aware of Mrs. Holloway's interested gaze. "Can we help you with something today?" Cole cleared his throat. "Actually, I wanted to let you know that I spoke with Sheriff Palmer this morning about Deeds and his men. They rode out of town last night, but the sheriff's keeping an eye out should they return." "That's very thoughtful of you," Delilah said. "Mrs. Kane." Holloway looked between them with a knowing expression that made Delilah blush. "Why don't you take your lunch now, dear? It's a lovely day for a walk." Before Delilah could respond, the older woman had bustled into the back room, leaving her alone with Cole. "I don't want to impose on your workday," Cole said. "You're not imposing." Delilah reached for her shawl. "I'd welcome the company, if you're offering." They walked side by side down the boardwalk, past the general store and the assayer's office. Silverspring was busier at midday, with freight wagons rumbling through town and miners coming in from the hills to resupply. Several people nodded to Cole, though Delilah noticed a few cross to the other side of the street upon seeing him. "You're known here," she observed. Cole's expression turned rueful. "Not always fondly. Mrs. Holloway mentioned you were a marshal once. A lifetime ago, it seems." He guided her toward a small cafe at the end of the street. "Do you mind if we eat? I promised Mrs. Holloway I'd see that you had a proper meal." The cafe was modest but clean, with checkered tablecloths and wildflowers in mason jars on each table. The proprietress, a stout woman with iron-gray hair, greeted Cole by name and showed them to a corner table. "What really brought you to Silverspring?" Delilah asked once they were seated. "Was it truly Deeds and his gang?" Cole studied her for a long moment. "You're direct, aren't you?" "Life's too short for dancing around truths," Delilah replied. "I learned that when my parents died within a week of each other." Cole nodded slowly. "I'm sorry for your loss." He traced the rim of his water glass with one finger. "And you're right. I didn't come here specifically for Deeds, though I recognized him from wanted posters. I'm looking for someone else, a man named Victor Harlow." "Who is he?" "A ghost from my past," Cole said, his blue eyes darkening. "And the reason I don't wear a gun anymore." Their food arrived, simple fare of beef stew and fresh bread, interrupting the conversation momentarily. Delilah sensed that Cole had already revealed more than he typically would, and decided not to press further for now. "Tell me about St. Louis," he said instead, changing the subject. I've never been east of the Mississippi. Delilah smiled, grateful for the lighter topic. It's nothing like here. The buildings are tall and made of brick. The streets are cobbled. And there's a constant bustle of people and carriages. Sounds crowded, Cole remarked. It can be, but there are also beautiful parks and the river. Delilah's voice grew wistful. My father was a bookbinder. Our home always smelled of leather and paper and glue. My mother taught music piano mainly. You had a good upbringing, Cole observed. I was fortunate, Delilah agreed. But that world is gone now. She straightened her shoulders. I'm making a new life here. Why Silverspring? There are larger towns with more opportunities for a young woman with your background. Delilah hesitated, then decided on honesty. I couldn't afford to travel farther. The illness that took my parents also took most of our savings for doctors and medicines. She met his gaze directly. And what about you? What was your life before becoming a marshal? Cole seemed surprised by the question. Unremarkable. My father ran a small ranch in northern Texas. I was the oldest of 4 boys. When the war came, my father and I both fought for the Confederacy. A shadow crossed his face. Neither of us returned the same. He died of his wounds 2 years after coming home. I drifted north, took work where I could find it, and became a lawman. Eventually, the marshal in Coopersville was killed during a bank robbery. I helped track down the men responsible. Afterward, they offered me the badge. Cole shrugged. Seemed like honest work at the time. The way he said "at the time" made Delilah curious about what had changed, but she sensed the walls going up around him again. Instead, she steered the conversation toward lighter topics, and by the time they finished their meal, Cole was smiling again. The tension eased from his shoulders. As they walked back toward the millinery shop, Cole seemed to come to a decision. Would you allow me to escort you to supper this evening? There's a decent restaurant at the hotel that serves a passable steak. Delilah felt a rush of warmth that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine. I'd like that very much. I'll call for you at 7 then. Cole touched the brim of his hat and turned to leave. Mr. Mitchell, Delilah called after him. When he turned back, she continued, I know there are things you're not telling me. Ghosts, as you put it. But I want you to know that I'm a good listener, whenever you're ready to talk about them. Something indefinable flickered in Cole's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He nodded once, then continued down the street, his stride purposeful. Delilah returned to the shop, where Mrs. Holloway was waiting with raised eyebrows and an expectant expression. Well? The older woman prompted. He's invited me to supper at the hotel restaurant, Delilah admitted. Has he now? Mrs. Holloway's face broke into a broad smile. Well. Cole Mitchell escorting a lady to dinner. That's something I never thought I'd see. She patted Delilah's hand. You finish early today, dear. You'll want time to prepare. As Delilah returned to arranging displays, her thoughts kept drifting to Cole. There was something about him that drew her, not just his handsome features or the strength he had demonstrated in the alley, but a depth of character that she sensed beneath his reserved exterior. Whatever ghosts haunted him, whatever had caused him to hang up his guns, she found herself increasingly eager to understand the man behind those guarded blue eyes. The afternoon crawled by, each tick of the shop's pendulum clock seeming to take an eternity. By the time Mrs. Holloway shooed her upstairs to prepare for her evening with Cole, Delilah's nerves were stretched taut with anticipation. Her wardrobe was limited. She had sold most of her finer clothes to finance her journey west, but she did have one dress saved from her former life, a deep burgundy wool with subtle black piping at the bodice and sleeves. It was perhaps a season out of fashion by St. Louis standards, but here in Silverspring, it would be considered quite elegant. After washing with her precious cake of lavender soap, Delilah dressed carefully, securing each button with fingers that trembled slightly. She arranged her hair in a more elaborate style than her usual practical bun, allowing a few soft curls to frame her face. A touch of rose water at her wrists and throat completed her preparations. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the shop's back door, which led directly to the staircase to her room. Delilah descended, her heart quickening at the sight of Cole waiting below. He had clearly made an effort for the evening, wearing a clean dark shirt under a well-brushed vest, his hair neatly combed. "Miss Dawson?" he said, his voice catching slightly as she reached the bottom step. "You look beautiful." Delilah felt a blush warm her cheeks. "Thank you. You're quite handsome yourself." Cole offered his arm, which she took, enjoying the solid strength of him beside her. The evening air was pleasantly cool as they walked toward the hotel, the setting sun painting the western sky in shades of amber and rose. Several townspeople greeted them as they passed, their curious glances following the unexpected pair. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Silverspring, which wasn't saying much by Eastern standards but represented luxury on the frontier. White tablecloths, actual glassware instead of tin cups, and a menu that offered more than the usual fare of beans and beef made it a special destination. The maitre d' seated them at a corner table, discreetly positioned away from the main dining area. Cole held Delilah's chair for her, a courtesy that spoke of a gentlemanly upbringing that surprised her. "Do you dine here often?" Delilah asked as they settled in. "First time, actually," Cole admitted. "I usually take my meals at the cafe or the saloon." "I'm honored to be the occasion for your inaugural visit, then," Delilah smiled. "Though I feel somewhat conspicuous. People are watching us." Cole's expression hardened briefly as he glanced around the room. People in small towns have long memories and little to occupy them but gossip. And what are they gossiping about tonight, I wonder? The Eastern spinster and the reformed gunslinger? Cole's laugh was unexpected and rich. "Is that how you see us?" "Isn't it how the town sees us?" Delilah countered. "Perhaps. Though I wouldn't call 22 a spinster, even by frontier standards." Delilah tilted her head. "How did you know my age?" "Mrs. Holloway might have mentioned it," Cole admitted. "She's quite protective of you." "She's been very kind," Delilah agreed. "But I sense she's more protective of you. She seemed pleased that you'd asked me to dinner." Cole's expression softened. "Mary Holloway knew me when I first wore a badge. She's one of the few who didn't turn away after—" He paused. "After things changed." The waiter arrived then to take their orders, and Delilah seized the opportunity to steer the conversation toward less troubled waters. They spoke of books they had read, Cole proving surprisingly well read for a man who had spent most of his life on the frontier and places they had traveled. It wasn't until their dinner plates had been cleared and coffee served that Delilah gently returned to the subject that hung between them. "You mentioned you're looking for someone, Victor Harlow. Is he why you've come to Silverspring?" Cole's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "Word is he passed through here about a month ago, heading north toward the mining camps." "And when you find him?" Delilah asked quietly. "I don't know," Cole admitted, meeting her gaze directly. "That's the truth of it. For 3 years I've been tracking him, and I still don't know what I'll do when I find him." "What did he do?" Cole was silent for a long moment, his eyes focused on something far beyond the walls of the restaurant. "He killed my wife," he finally said, the words falling between them like stones into still water. Delilah felt as if the air had been pulled from her lungs. "Cole, I'm so sorry." "It was the winter of '75, Cole continued, his voice low and controlled. "I was marshal in Coopersville. Rebecca and I had been married just over a year. She was—" A fleeting smile touched his lips. "She was sunshine, no other way to describe her, made everyone around her happier just by existing." Delilah remained silent, giving him space to continue at his own pace. Harlow rode into town with a gang of outlaws. I was away, tracking a horse thief. They robbed the bank, shot the teller. Rebecca was there, making a deposit from the dressmaking shop where she worked. Cole's knuckles had gone white around his cup. Witnesses said she tried to help the teller. Harlow shot her for it. No reason. Just shot her and rode out. That's terrible, Delilah whispered, her heart aching for the pain etched into Cole's weathered face. I came back to find her already buried, Cole continued. The town had handled everything. Her grave, the funeral. I hadn't even gotten to say goodbye. His voice broke slightly on the last word. I swore I'd find Harlow. Tracked him for months. Finally cornered him and 2 of his men in a canyon near the territorial border. Cole fell silent, seemingly lost in the memory. After a moment, Delilah gently prompted, "What happened?" "I killed the other 2 men," Cole said flatly. "Had Harlow dead to rights. My gun trained on him, his empty, and I couldn't pull the trigger." The admission seemed to cost him something. All those months of hatred and rage, and when the moment came, I couldn't do it. Not in cold blood. "That speaks to your character," Delilah said softly. "Not your weakness." Cole shook his head. "I arrested him instead. Brought him back to stand trial. The night before the circuit judge was due to arrive, someone broke him out of jail. A hired gun working for Harlow's brother." His jaw tightened. 2 more people died that night, my deputy and a young woman who happened to be passing by the jail. More blood on my hands because I couldn't do what needed doing when I had the chance. "You can't blame yourself for others' actions," Delilah said. "Can't I?" Cole's eyes, when they met hers, were haunted. "I hung up my guns after that. Figured I'd done enough damage with them. Been tracking Harlow without one ever since." "And that's why you fought those men barehanded yesterday," Delilah realized. "You truly don't carry a weapon anymore." "Not for 3 years now." "But Cole," Delilah leaned forward, her voice urgent. "What do you plan to do if you find Harlow? Without a gun?" "I'll manage," Cole interrupted, his expression closing. "I've learned other ways to handle trouble." Delilah sensed she had pushed as far as she could for one evening. "Thank you for telling me," she said instead. "I know it wasn't easy." Something in Cole's face softened. Strangely enough, it was easier than I expected. He reached across the table, hesitated, then covered her hand with his. "You're easy to talk to, Delilah Dawson." The warmth of his calloused palm against her skin sent a flutter through Delilah's chest. "I'm glad," she said simply. They finished their coffee in companionable silence, the weight of Cole's revelations settling between them not as a barrier, but as a shared understanding. When they finally left the restaurant, the night had fully descended, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet blackness of the sky. Cole insisted on walking Delilah back to her lodgings, their pace unhurried as they savored the cool night air and each other's company. At the door to the millinery shop, they paused. Suddenly awkward in the way of 2 people who have shared more than they intended and now must navigate the aftermath. "Thank you for a lovely evening," Delilah said, her voice soft in the stillness. "The pleasure was mine," Cole replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again, if you're willing." Delilah smiled up at him. "I'd like that very much." Cole's gaze dropped to her lips, and for a breathless moment Delilah thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took her hand, raising it gently to his lips in a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and deeply meaningful. "Good night, Delilah," he murmured against her fingers. "Good night, Cole." She watched him walk away, his tall figure gradually swallowed by the darkness of the street. Only when he had disappeared from sight did Delilah enter the shop, her heart lighter than it had been in months, despite the weight of Cole's painful history. Whatever tomorrow might bring, Tonight had given her something she hadn't realized. She needed a connection that ran deeper than mere attraction, with a man whose quiet strength and hidden pain called to something in her own soul. The following week passed in a sweet blur for Delilah. Each day brought Cole to the millinery shop, sometimes for lunch, other times just to pass a few moments in conversation before continuing about his business. In the evenings, he escorted her on walks around the small town, gradually introducing her to its landmarks and residents. Silverspring, she discovered, was more complex than she had initially believed. Founded as a mining town 15 years earlier, it had survived the inevitable bust by establishing itself as a supply center for the surrounding ranches and smaller mining operations. Its population was a mix of the expected frontier types: miners, cowboys, shopkeepers, alongside a surprising number of families trying to establish more permanent roots. Cole seemed to know everyone, though his relationships with the townspeople varied widely. Some, like Mrs. Holloway, greeted him with genuine warmth. Others nodded stiffly, their expressions guarded. A few openly avoided him, crossing the street when they saw him approaching. "You said people have long memories," Delilah remarked one evening as they strolled past the town's small schoolhouse. "But you never told me what happened in Silverspring that makes some folks so wary of you." Cole sighed, his breath visible in the cooling evening air. "It's connected to the Harlow business in a way." He guided her toward a bench beneath a cottonwood tree, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze. "After Harlow escaped, after I gave up the badge, I tracked him to Silver Spring. This was about 2 years ago." Delilah settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Did you find him?" "No, but I found his brother, Edward, the one who'd arranged his escape." Cole's expression hardened. "He was living here under a different name, married to a local widow, acting the respectable businessman. No one knew his real identity." "What did you do?" "Confronted him in the saloon," Cole said. "It got heated. Edward pulled a gun. I disarmed him, broke his arm in the process. It wasn't pretty." "But you were justified," Delilah protested. "He drew on you." "The problem wasn't what I did," Cole explained. "It was what came after. Edward Harlow had friends here, people who'd accepted him. When they learned who he really was, the town split down the middle. Some demanded he be arrested for his past crimes. Others stood by him, claimed he'd reformed." Cole shook his head. "In the end, a group of vigilantes dragged him from his home in the middle of the night. They were going to hang him." Delilah gasped. "What happened?" "I stopped them," Cole said simply. "Convinced them to let the law handle it. Sheriff Palmer locked Edward up until the circuit judge could arrive." His jaw tightened. "The night before the judge was due, someone shot Edward through the jail window. Never found out who did it." "And people blame you for that?" "Some blame me for exposing Edward in the first place, disrupting their peaceful town. Others blame me for stopping the hanging, say if they'd done it their way, at least they'd have controlled it." Cole's smile was bitter. "Can't please everyone." Delilah reached for his hand, weaving her fingers through his. "You did what you thought was right. Did I?" Cole's voice held genuine uncertainty. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just causing more harm than good, chasing the past this way." They sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of Cole's admission hanging between them. Finally, Delilah spoke. "My father used to say that when you don't know if you're doing the right thing, do the kind thing instead." She squeezed his hand. "It seems to me you've consistently chosen kindness, even at great personal cost." Cole looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You see the best in people, don't you?" "I try to," Delilah admitted. "Life's too short and too difficult to focus on the worst." Cole lifted their joined hands, studying the contrast between his sun-browned skin and her paler fingers. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said quietly. Heard from a reliable source that Victor Harlow's been seen in a mining camp about 3 days' ride north of here. The news struck Delilah with unexpected force, a hollow feeling opening in her chest. I see, she managed. I'd like it if you'd wait for me, Cole continued, his eyes still fixed on their hands. I know it's a lot to ask. We've known each other barely a week. But He broke off, seeming to struggle for words. I'll wait, Delilah said simply. Cole's gaze lifted to her face. You will? Yes. The certainty in her voice surprised even her. How long do you think you'll be gone? A week, maybe 2. Cole hesitated. If I find Harlow, I don't know what will happen. Delilah nodded, understanding the unspoken implications. Just come back, Cole. Whatever happens with Harlow, come back to me. Something shifted in Cole's expression, a tension easing that she hadn't fully realized was there. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished. Delilah remained still, her heart thundering in her chest as his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it was barely more than a breath. When he pulled back, his eyes searching hers, Delilah raised a hand to his cheek. That's not nearly enough to tide me over for 2 weeks, she whispered, and drew him back for a deeper kiss. Cole's arms encircled her waist, pulling her closer as the kiss lengthened, grew from tentative to certain. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly, and Delilah could feel the rapid beat of Cole's heart beneath her palm. I should get you back, Cole said reluctantly, before I forget myself entirely. Delilah smiled, feeling both wholly herself and somehow transformed by the moment they had shared. Walk me home, then. They returned to the millinery shop in comfortable silence, hands linked, shoulders brushing occasionally. At the door, Cole kissed her once more, briefly but with a promise that made Delilah's pulse quicken. I'll leave at first light, he said, but I'll be thinking of you every step of the way. Be careful, Delilah urged, and remember your promise to return. Cole touched her cheek lightly. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. After he had gone, Delilah leaned against the shop door, her fingertips tracing her lips where the warmth of his kiss still lingered. In just a week, this man had worked his way into her heart with a sureness that should have frightened her. Instead, she felt anchored in a way she hadn't since before her parents' deaths. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever Cole might face in his confrontation with Harlow, Delilah was certain of one thing. Her heart had found its home in this quiet, complicated man with the troubled past and gentle hands. True to his word, Cole departed at dawn the next morning. Delilah rose early to see him off, meeting him at the livery stable where he was saddling a sturdy bay gelding. The morning air was crisp, the sky just beginning to lighten with the promise of sunrise. You didn't have to come, Cole said, though his smile belied his words. I wanted to, Delilah replied. She held out a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Something for your journey. Cole took it, their fingers brushing in the exchange. What is it? Open it and see. He unwrapped the package carefully to reveal a pair of finely knitted gloves. Did you make these? He asked, running a finger over the intricate pattern. Delilah nodded. I worked on them each night after you walked me home. They're not much, but the nights can be cold in the mountains. Cole slipped them on, flexing his fingers. They're perfect. He reached for her, drawing her close. Thank you. Their kiss was bittersweet with the knowledge of impending separation. Delilah clung to him briefly, memorizing the feel of him, the scent of leather and soap that seemed uniquely his. Be safe, she whispered against his chest. I will. Cole pressed a final kiss to her forehead before mounting his horse. 2 weeks, Delilah. I'll be back before you know it. She watched him ride out of town, a solitary figure against the lightening eastern sky, until the road curved and he disappeared from view. Only then did she allow herself to acknowledge the fear that had been building since he'd mentioned Harlow's name. Cole was riding toward a man who had already taken one love from him. Delilah couldn't shake the dread that history might repeat itself, that the fragile happiness she had found might be snatched away before it had truly begun. The days that followed were an exercise in patience. Delilah threw herself into her work at the millinery, grateful for the distraction it provided. Mrs. Holloway, sensing her anxiety, kept her busy with increasingly complex projects, praising her skillful hands and artistic eye. "You've a gift for this work," the older woman remarked one afternoon as they closed the shop. "I was thinking, well, I'm not getting any younger. In a few years, I might be looking to take on a partner in the business." Delilah looked up from the account book she was balancing. "A partner?" "Someone with fresh ideas and steady hands," Mrs. Holloway continued. "Someone who could eventually take over the shop entirely." She smiled kindly. "Just something to consider, dear. I know you might have other plans, especially if a certain tall gentleman returns with his mind set on matrimony." Delilah felt her cheeks warm. "We've known each other such a short time." "Sometimes time isn't the measure," Mrs. Holloway said wisely. "My Walter proposed to me after 2 weeks' acquaintance. We had 43 good years together before he passed." The notion of a future with Cole, of building a life together in Silverspring, was both thrilling and terrifying. Delilah had come west seeking a new beginning, but she hadn't dared hope for the kind of happiness that seemed possible with him, if he returned safely. The thought intruded like an unwelcome guest, and Delilah pushed it firmly away. "Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. I'm honored that you'd consider me for such a position." "Think nothing of it, dear. Now, will you join me for supper at the cafe? No sense in eating alone when we could enjoy each other's company." The invitation was typical of Mrs. Holloway's kindness, and Delilah accepted gratefully. As they walked to the cafe, the older woman chatting about an order of feathers expected on the next stagecoach, Delilah realized how fortunate she had been in finding not just employment, but genuine friendship in this frontier town. Their meal was pleasant, the conversation flowing easily between topics both practical and frivolous. It wasn't until they were finishing their apple pie that the cafe door swung open with unusual force, admitting Sheriff Palmer with a grim expression that instantly silenced the room. "Evening, ladies," he said, approaching their table and removing his hat. "Miss Dawson, might I have a word?" Delilah felt her stomach clench with sudden dread. "Of course, Sheriff. Is something wrong?" Palmer glanced around the now quiet cafe, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. "Perhaps we could step outside?" Mrs. Holloway placed a protective hand on Delilah's arm. "Whatever you have to say can be said in front of me, Robert Palmer. This girl's been like family to me these past weeks." The sheriff sighed but nodded. "Very well. Miss Dawson. A rider came in about an hour ago from Elk Creek, that mining settlement north of here." He hesitated, his weathered face troubled. "There was trouble there 3 days back. A shooting." "Cole," Delilah whispered, her voice barely audible. Palmer nodded. "Mitchell confronted a man identified as Victor Harlow at the mining company office. Witnesses say Harlow drew first, but Mitchell, well, he wasn't armed." The room seemed to tilt around Delilah. "Is he—" She couldn't finish the question, terror closing her throat. "He's alive," Palmer assured her quickly. "But he was shot. The rider said it was serious. But Mitchell was holding on when he left Elk Creek." "I have to go to him," Delilah said, already rising from her seat. "Now, Miss Dawson," Palmer began. "It's 3 days hard riding through rough country. No place for a—" "I don't care," Delilah interrupted, an uncharacteristic fierceness in her voice. "I'm going. Tonight, if possible." Mrs. Holloway squeezed her arm. "Delilah, dear, be sensible. You can't ride out alone in the dark. Then I'll leave at first light, Delilah insisted. But I am going, Mrs. Holloway. Cole needs me. The older woman studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But you're not going alone. She turned to the sheriff. Robert, find someone trustworthy to escort Miss Dawson to Elk Creek. Someone who knows the trail and can keep her safe. Palmer rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. The Weaver boy might be available. He runs supplies up to the mining camps regular-like. Honest fellow, good with a gun if needed. Perfect, Mrs. Holloway declared. Have him ready at dawn. I'll see to it that Miss Dawson has whatever she needs for the journey. She fixed Delilah with a stern look that softened almost immediately. And don't you worry about the shop. I managed alone before you came, and I can manage a few days without you. Tears pricked Delilah's eyes at the kindness. Thank you, she managed. Now, finish your pie, Mrs. Holloway instructed. You'll need your strength. Delilah tried to eat but found the food tasteless. Her appetite vanished. All she could think about was Cole, wounded and alone in a strange town. Had Harlow survived the encounter? Was Cole under arrest? The questions multiplied, each more worrying than the last. Back at the millinery, Mrs. Holloway helped her pack a small valise with essentials for the journey. I've included my medical kit, the older woman said, placing a wooden box carefully among Delilah's clothes. I was a nurse during the war. These supplies might prove useful. I don't know how to thank you, Delilah said. Mrs. Holloway patted her cheek. Just bring our boy home safe. That's all the thanks I need. Delilah tried to sleep but found it impossible. She spent the night alternating between prayer and practical preparations, checking and rechecking her packed belongings. When the first hint of dawn lightened her window, she was already dressed and ready, her valise waiting by the door. Downstairs, she found not only young Jim Weaver but also Mrs. Holloway, who had arrived early to see her off with a package of food for the journey and a tearful embrace. Godspeed, my dear, the older woman whispered. I'll be praying for you both. The journey to Elk Creek was arduous, the trail winding through increasingly rugged terrain as they left the plains behind and entered the foothills of the mountains. Jim Weaver proved an excellent guide and a respectful companion, setting a pace that balanced speed with consideration for Delilah's less experienced horsemanship. They spoke little during the long hours in the saddle, each lost in their own thoughts. Delilah found herself replaying every moment she had shared with Cole, from that first encounter in the alley to their farewell kiss. So little time, but it had been enough to know that what she felt for him was real and rare. They made camp each night beneath the stars, Jim building a small fire and taking first watch, while Delilah tried to rest on a bedroll that seemed impossibly hard compared to her comfortable bed above the millinery. Sleep came in fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of Cole lying wounded, calling her name. On the morning of the third day, as they crested a ridge, Delilah got her first glimpse of Elk Creek, a collection of wooden buildings nestled in a narrow valley, smoke rising from several chimneys. The sight sent her heart racing with both hope and fear. That's it, Jim confirmed. Mining company headquarters is that big building on the north end. Doctor's place is the small cabin with the red door just beyond the general store. Delilah urged her horse forward, suddenly desperate to close the remaining distance. Jim kept pace, his expression concerned. Miss Dawson, he said hesitantly, I should warn you. Mining camp doctors aren't always what you might be used to. Some are proper trained physicians, but others... He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. I understand, Delilah said, though her stomach twisted with renewed worry. Thank you for your honesty. They rode into Elk Creek just as the midday meal was concluding, the few residents visible on the street regarding them with curious stares. Jim led them directly to the doctor's cabin, where he helped Delilah dismount on legs stiff from 3 days' riding. I'll see to the horses, he offered. Take all the time you need. Delilah approached the red door on unsteady legs, her heart thundering in her chest. Before she could knock, it swung open to reveal a harried-looking man in his 50s, spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "Another mining injury?" he asked brusquely. "I've told Jorgensen 100 times those support beams aren't adequate." "No," Delilah interrupted. "I'm looking for Cole Mitchell. I was told he was brought here after being shot." The doctor's expression changed, softening slightly. "You're here for Mitchell? Family?" Delilah hesitated only briefly. "Yes, I'm his fiancée." It wasn't exactly a lie, she told herself. In her heart, she had already committed to Cole, whatever the future might hold. The doctor stepped back, allowing her to enter. "He's in the back room. Been through hell, that one, but he's stubborn. Wouldn't die when by all rights he should have." "He's alive, then?" Delilah asked, relief making her dizzy. "Alive and improving," the doctor confirmed, leading her through the small front room that served as his office into a hallway with 3 doors. "Took 2 bullets, one in the shoulder, one in the side. Lost a lot of blood. Fever set in the 2nd day." He paused outside the last door. "But the fever broke yesterday, and he's been asking for you. Called your name in his sleep. Too." Delilah felt tears spring to her eyes. "May I see him now?" "Go ahead. I'll bring some fresh water." The doctor paused. "It's good you came. He needs a reason to fight." With a deep breath to steady herself, Delilah opened the door. The small room was simply furnished with a bed, a chair, and a nightstand. Sunlight streamed through a narrow window, illuminating the man lying motionless beneath a patchwork quilt. Cole looked terrible. His face was pale beneath his tan, his cheeks hollow, dark shadows smudging the skin beneath his closed eyes. A bandage wrapped his left shoulder, visible where the quilt had slipped down. His breathing was shallow but steady. Delilah moved to his side, gently taking his hand. His skin felt warm, not feverish, but alive. At her touch, his eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly. "I must be dreaming again," he murmured, his voice hoarse from disuse. "No dream," Delilah said softly, squeezing his hand. "I'm really here." Cole blinked, his gaze sharpening as he took in her face. "Delilah? How?" "Sheriff Palmer received word about what happened. I came as soon as I heard." She brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. "You gave me quite a scare, Cole Mitchell." A faint smile touched his lips. "Wasn't exactly my plan." "What happened?" Delilah asked. "The sheriff said you confronted Harlow." Cole's expression darkened. "Found him at the mining office. He was working as a bookkeeper under a false name." He shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "I told him who I was, why I'd come. He drew on me before I could say more." "And you had no weapon," Delilah said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. "I had my reasons, Delilah. Reasons that nearly got you killed." Cole's grip on her hand tightened. "But I'm still here." His eyes searched her face. "You rode 3 days to reach me?" "I would have ridden 30 if necessary," Delilah replied simply. Something shifted in Cole's expression, a tenderness that made Delilah's heart catch. "I've never had anyone care that much what happened to me, not since Rebecca." Delilah leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "Well, get used to it because I'm not going anywhere until you're well enough to travel. And then, we're going home. Together." "Home," Cole repeated, as if testing the word. "Silverspring?" "For now," Delilah said. "Unless you have other ideas?" Cole's smile strengthened. "I think Silverspring sounds just fine." He paused, seeming to gather his strength. "Did they tell you what happened to Harlow?" Delilah shook her head. "No one mentioned him. He's dead," Cole said flatly. "After he shot me, he tried to run. The mining company manager stopped him, shot him as he was mounting his horse." A complex emotion crossed Cole's face. All these years hunting him, and in the end, I wasn't even the one who... Does it matter? Delilah asked gently. He can't hurt anyone else now. It's over, Cole. It's over, Cole agreed, his voice distant. Then his gaze refocused on her face, becoming clearer, more present. I thought about you, when I was lying there bleeding, thought about all the things I should have said before I left. You can say them now, Delilah encouraged, her heart quickening. I love you, Cole said simply. It's too soon, probably. We've known each other such a short time, but I've never been more certain of anything. Tears blurred Delilah's vision. I love you too. She laughed softly through her tears. And if it's too soon, then we're both fools together. Cole tugged gently at her hand, pulling her closer until she was perched on the edge of the bed. I don't have much to offer you, Delilah. No land, no fortune, just myself. Whatever that's worth. It's worth everything to me, Delilah assured him, leaning down to brush her lips against his. Everything. The doctor cleared his throat from the doorway, where he stood holding a basin of water. I see the patient's improving rapidly, he observed dryly. Still, perhaps we should save the more vigorous reunions for when he's a bit stronger. Delilah blushed, but didn't move from her position. How long before he can travel, doctor? Another week, at least, the doctor replied, setting down the basin. The journey back to Silverspring isn't one to undertake lightly in his condition. Then we'll stay a week, Delilah decided. She looked at Cole. That is, if there's somewhere I can lodge? The mining company keeps rooms for visitors, the doctor said before Cole could respond. I'm sure they'll accommodate you, especially given your connection to Mr. Mitchell. He's something of a local hero now. Hero? Cole repeated, clearly puzzled. Turns out your Mr. Harlow wasn't just hiding from his past, the doctor explained. He'd been embezzling from the mining company for months. Your confrontation exposed his scheme. He adjusted his spectacles. The company manager is quite grateful, despite the mess. When the doctor had gone, promising to return later to change Cole's bandages, Delilah settled into the chair beside the bed. A hero, she mused. That suits you. Cole shook his head slightly. I'm no hero, Delilah. Just a man trying to make peace with his past. And have you made peace? Cole was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. I think maybe I have, he finally said. Not because Harlow is dead, but because... He looked at her, his eyes warm with an emotion that made Delilah's heart swell. Because I found something worth living for again. Delilah leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. Rest now, she murmured. We have all the time in the world to talk about the future. Cole's eyes drifted closed, his breathing deepening as exhaustion claimed him once more. Delilah remained where she was, watching over him as the afternoon light slowly shifted across the small room. Whatever lay ahead, whatever challenges they might face, she was certain of one thing. The new life she had sought in coming west had found her in ways she could never have imagined, in the form of this quiet, honorable man who had fought his own demons and emerged scarred but unbroken. The road back to Silverspring was indeed arduous, but Cole's strength returned more rapidly than the doctor had anticipated. By the 5th day after Delilah's arrival, he was able to sit up and take short walks around the doctor's cabin. By the 7th, he insisted he was ready to travel. You're pushing yourself too hard, Delilah admonished as she helped him button his shirt, his injured shoulder still limiting his mobility. I'm fine, Cole assured her, though the lines of pain around his eyes belied his words. Besides, I miss Mrs. Holloway's cooking. Delilah smiled, recognizing the deflection for what it was. And I'm sure she misses having someone appreciate it properly. She told me you're the only person in Silver Spring who can tell the difference between her regular biscuits and her special Sunday ones. The Sunday ones have a hint of honey, Cole said seriously. Makes all the difference. The doctor reluctantly cleared Cole for travel, with strict instructions about changing bandages and watching for signs of infection. Jim Weaver, who had stayed in Elk Creek awaiting Delilah's word, arranged for a wagon with a padded bench, judging that Cole wasn't yet ready for a 3-day ride on horseback. The return journey took 4 days instead of 3, with frequent stops to allow Cole to rest and Delilah to tend to his wounds. Despite the discomfort and the slow pace, they found moments of joy in the shared adventure evenings by the campfire where they spoke of their hopes for the future, mornings waking to the beauty of the wilderness surrounding them, quiet hours in the wagon when words weren't necessary. On the afternoon of the 4th day, they crested the final ridge to see Silverspring spread out before them, its familiar buildings bathed in golden late-day light. "Home," Cole said softly, his arm around Delilah's shoulders as they sat together on the wagon bench. Jim driving the team with careful hands. "Home," Delilah agreed, resting her head against him. "Mrs. Holloway offered me a partnership in the millinery, you know. Eventually ownership, when she's ready to retire." Cole glanced down at her. "Is that something you want?" "I think it might be," Delilah admitted. "I'm good at the work, and I enjoy it." She hesitated. "But what about you? What will you do now that Harlow is gone?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that," he finally said. "Sheriff Palmer mentioned once that he could use a deputy. Said the town's growing too big for one lawman to handle alone." Delilah stiffened slightly. "But you said you'd given up wearing a gun." "I have," Cole agreed. "But Palmer said that wasn't necessarily a problem. That sometimes a man who knows how to resolve trouble without shooting is exactly what's needed." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "What do you think?" Delilah considered the question seriously. "I think you'd be good at it," she said slowly. "You have a way of seeing people, understanding them." She looked up at him. "But is it what you want?" "I want to be useful," Cole said. "To build something good, something lasting." His voice softened. "With you, if you'll have me." Delilah's heart swelled at the simple sincerity in his words. "Cole Mitchell, if that's a proposal, it's the least romantic one in history." Cole laughed, the sound warming her to her toes. "Fair point." He shifted on the bench, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his healing wounds. "Let me try again when I'm not half broken and covered in trail dust." "I'll hold you to that," Delilah promised, pressing a kiss to his stubbled cheek. As they drove into town, news of their arrival spread quickly. By the time they reached the doctor's office, where Palmer had insisted Cole be examined before anything else, a small crowd had gathered. Mrs. Holloway was at the forefront, her face alight with relief as she helped Delilah down from the wagon. "Thank the Lord," the older woman exclaimed, embracing Delilah fiercely before turning to Cole. "And you, young man, have some explaining to do, running off to get yourself shot. What were you thinking?" Cole's smile was tired but genuine. "Missed you too, Mrs. Holloway." The town doctor, a competent if somewhat gruff man named Wilson, declared Cole's wounds healing well but ordered another week of rest before he could return to gallivanting around town, as he put it. "He'll stay with me," Mrs. Holloway declared. "I've got that spare room on the ground floor, so he won't have to manage stairs, and I'll make sure he follows doctor's orders." Cole looked as if he might protest, but a warning glance from Delilah silenced him. "That's very generous, Mrs. Holloway," he said instead. "Nonsense," the older woman replied. "It's what friends do." She linked her arm with Delilah's. "Now, let's get this man settled. I've got a pot of stew waiting, and you look like you could use a proper meal yourself, dear." The week that followed established a new rhythm to their lives. Delilah worked in the shop during the day, spending her evenings with Cole at Mrs. Holloway's cozy home. As his strength returned, Cole began taking short walks around town, often ending up at the sheriff's office, where he and Palmer would talk for hours. True to his word, once he was fully recovered, Cole formally proposed not with grand gestures or flowery speeches, but with simple, heartfelt words as they walked along the creek that gave Silverspring its name. "I never thought I'd find love again," he said, taking both her hands in his. "Never thought I deserved to. But you've shown me that the past doesn't have to define the future." He drew a small ring from his pocket, a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained, "the only thing of value I've held onto all these years." "It's beautiful," Delilah whispered, tears blurring her vision. "Delilah Dawson, will you marry me? Build a life with me here in Silverspring?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." They were married in the small church on the edge of town, as autumn painted the surrounding hills in shades of gold and crimson. Mrs. Holloway hosted the reception in her garden, decorated with paper lanterns and wildflowers. The entire town turned out, even those who had once regarded Cole with suspicion, a testament to the quiet respect he had earned in the months since their return from Elk Creek. Sheriff Palmer stood as Cole's best man, while Mrs. Holloway gave Delilah away in the absence of family. After the ceremony, as they moved among their guests accepting congratulations, Delilah caught Cole watching her with an expression of such wonder that it made her heart ache with happiness. "What is it?" she asked when they had a moment alone. "Just thinking about how different my life was a year ago," Cole replied. "Hunting ghosts, carrying all that anger and grief." He touched her cheek gently. "You saved me, Delilah, in every way that matters." "We saved each other," Delilah corrected, thinking of that terrifying night in the alley where their story had begun. "And now we have a lifetime to build something beautiful together." As twilight settled over Silverspring, Cole led his bride in a first dance beneath the swaying lanterns. The townspeople gathered around, their faces warm with approval and shared joy. Delilah, secure in the circle of Cole's arms, felt the final pieces of her new life settling into place. This was home, not just the town with its dusty streets and growing promise, but this man, this love they had found against all odds in the wild frontier that had once seemed so intimidating. "I love you, Mrs. Mitchell," Cole murmured against her hair as they danced. "And I love you, Mr. Mitchell," Delilah replied, her heart full to bursting. "Today and all our tomorrows." The years that followed brought changes to Silverspring and to the Mitchells themselves. Cole took the deputy position, eventually succeeding Palmer as sheriff when the older man retired. His reputation for resolving conflicts without violence earned him respect throughout the territory, and under his watch, Silverspring grew from a frontier outpost to a thriving town. Delilah became Mrs. Holloway's partner in the millinery, expanding the business to include dressmaking as well. When Mrs. Holloway passed peacefully in her sleep 5 years after the Mitchells' wedding, she left the shop entirely to Delilah, who honored her mentor by maintaining the high standards and warm welcome that had been the establishment's hallmark. Their first child, a daughter they named Mary after Mrs. Holloway, arrived in the spring of 1880. A son, Thomas, followed 2 years later. Their home, a comfortable house on the edge of town that Cole had built with his own hands, rang with children's laughter and the everyday sounds of a family bound by deep love and shared purpose. On quiet evenings when the children were asleep and the day's work done, Cole and Delilah would often sit on their porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky. Sometimes they spoke of the past, of the strange twist of fate that had brought them together that night in the alley, of the journey that had led them from fear and loss to the rich life they now shared. More often, they spoke of the future of their children's education, of improvements to the town, of dreams still taking shape. And always, beneath the words, ran the current of gratitude for the second chance they had been given, for the love that had transformed them both. In a frontier where life was often harsh and uncertain, they had found in each other not just safety or comfort, but a profound belonging that neither had dared hope for. From the violence of their first meeting had grown a peace that sustained them through whatever challenges arose, a testament to the healing power of love, freely given and gratefully received. And on the 10th anniversary of the night Cole had fought barehanded to save a stranger from harm, he gifted Delilah a small silver locket engraved with a simple message: "Every road led to you." Inside was a tiny sketch of the alleyway where their story had begun, not as a reminder of the fear of that moment, but as a celebration of the courage that had allowed them both to reach beyond their pasts toward a future brighter than either could have imagined alone. "Sometimes," Cole said as he clasped the locket around her neck, "the worst moments lead us to the best ones, if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." Delilah touched the locket, then laid her hand against her husband's weathered cheek. "I'd walk through fire to reach you," she said simply. Then, and now. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, hands entwined, surrounded by the life they had built together, a testament to the enduring power of second chances and hearts brave enough to risk loving again, even in the wild uncertainty of the frontier they called home.